I am
Hello, everyone.
vengeance.
And I am Stephen Colton, and welcome to this week's edition of Between a Pot and a Hard Place.
All right. You know what? I'm
Oh.
going to say I am really excited about tonight. I
Yeah.
know that you and I both had an opportunity this week to go and watch The Batman. And so I feel like it's one of those things everybody is talking about right now. So it kind of makes sense that we get a chance to go ahead and do a review of our own here tonight.
Oh, wait. Okay, that was you saying, hey,
That was
everybody
me.
else.
Yeah.
I was like, Chris, it's the NSYNC guy for a split second. I was like, he's here, finally.
You know, he's a fan. He's one of our subscribers.
We need to start reviewing NSYNC albums.
I know.
And playing them, and then they will, at least then they'll get their attention, like, hey, stop it. And then they'll come in and realize.
Yeah. I think we can put a pin in that idea and come back to it.
Yeah, I mean, we could. But yeah, the Batman.
Yeah.
Unmask the truth. We find out at the end that it's Bruce Wayne the whole time.
Right. I mean, I had no idea.
So I wanted to go ahead and kind of throw this out there. I was looking up earlier. The Caped Crusader is back. The Batman, starring Robert Pattinson, in his first turn as the brooding crime fighter, flew to a huge $130 million in domestic box office debut to secure the second best opening of the pandemic era, behind 2021 Spider-Man No Way Home. And this was about a week ago. And yeah, I mean, that's a pretty big opening weekend, considering especially the pandemic era of film and everything. And Spider-Man blew us away with the box office opening weekend.
Right. I mean, number 2 ain't bad, and we don't know where it's going to end. Once it's done showing here in the States, and once it's shown all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, it could top Spider-Man, or at least be right there with it.
So, Steven, I've got to be honest and tell you, I've been around for a while, and I've watched just about every version of Batman in existence. So I have a pretty high bar when it comes to, Batman material. Number one, I think I've always worried that we would get so many Batmen that we would just kind of get burned out on Batman.
Yeah.
And I think I was one of those people who was particularly tough on Robert Pattinson because of his history with Twilight. Mind you, I'm a Twilight fan. I've watched all the movies multiple times. I've read all the books. But in my head, I had a hard time letting go of Robert Pattinson as this broody teenager kid in Twilight. And I wondered how he was going to translate into the movie itself.
But for him to prepare for his role, he did spend 14 years being known as the guy from Twilight.
He did. And you know what? That preparation absolutely paid off.
And so vampires actually do turn into bats, as we see here. But he is the worst vampire because it did take him 11 years to turn into a bat. So, I mean, but he does look cool as Batman. I got to admit, I love the fact that, you see the image here on the left part of the screen. He's got the eye makeup. And it's the first time we've seen a superhero really take his mask off and the makeup is still there. They didn't pretend like, oh, it just is part of the mask.
It really reminded me a lot of early Green Arrow. With Stephen Amell, that grease paint over his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody reminded me in this movie, for the Batman, we're not looking at a Batman who's been doing it for decades. This is very, very early in his crime fighting career.
We have Robert here, and this is actually my uncle. I've talked about him on here before.
Hey, Robert.
We actually I'd gotten together with him to go see it, some of his friends from work and stuff, and he's saying his favorite's still the Nolan trilogy, and I have to agree overall. The new one's good, and the guy playing the Riddler is like the perfect casting, and that we'll probably get to that in a little bit when the Riddler is finally unmasked. It's perfect.
Yeah, no, I've really thought a lot about who I prefer as Batman, and oddly enough, I think we have to kind of think about how. Just because you play a great Batman, do you necessarily play a great Bruce Wayne?
Exactly. Yeah.
And for me, I feel like I loved Christian Bale in Nolan's rendition. The Batman Begins trilogy. Number one, it was comprehensive. It was well written, well cast, and for me, it still is at the very top of what I kind of think to be, the best Batman films. That said, when I compare, I definitely put Pattinson in my top three, right?
I would, yeah.
For me, there's there's Bale, there's Keaton, and then there's Pattinson.
I would probably agree with that. And I would only say Ben Affleck had we gotten more of it, because he was barely in there as Batman at all. He didn't get a movie. He was just kind of like, oh, it's Superman's friend. And then when we got the whole like Martha scene and that kind of, I don't know. I mean, he looked okay as Batman. He seemed to be a good Batman, but he was a future, like not future, but an older Bruce Wayne. So we didn't really get a chance to get to know him as Batman or as Bruce Wayne. But
I agree.
Out of the ones that did get their own movies, I would probably agree with your order, honestly, because I don't know. George Clooney was pretty badass. He wasn't.
He was just bad. George Clooney was bad.
He was bad, ass.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, bat nipples, all that kind of garbage. Yeah. I would say.
I know.
Not even including Adam West, because that was a whole different thing. But yeah,
for me, Adam West is. I'll tell kind of a story. Growing up, the Adam West era had already passed, but my brother and I ended up spending a couple of weeks with some family friends while my parents were out of town, and this family, they were kind of weird. They had a TV, but they were one of those people that they locked up the TV. Right.
Yep,
and they only literally a lock and key on the TV. They shuttered it closed. And the only time during the day that they opened it up to watch TV was as a family to watch the Adam West Batman. So for like 3 weeks, that was the only show we watched, was the Adam West Batman. And when we came home, that was one of those things that stuck. We just kept watching. And I went back and binged watched all of the old classic Adam West. There was something very simple, very, very wholesome, yes, kind of hokey about those, but
they were good. I mean,
they were.
It was different. It was a different look at Batman. It was cartoony. It was like a live action cartoon.
I love. Somebody once said that Adam West was probably the strongest of the Batman.
Probably.
He was the only one that when you hit somebody, it actually said the word on the screen.
And
so
all he really had to do was like drink buttermilk or use his anti-everything spray, and he would be good. He could put anti-death spray on him and like, I can't die.
Now I loved. What I loved about the old Adam West era is, the absolute lack of blood. When we think about the modern versions of Batman being very dark and brooding, and he wasn't, right. There was a very almost friendly vibe that you get from his Batman.
He was equal. Yeah. I have the original, like the '66 Batman movie, and I want to go back and watch it again. I think I found the Blu-ray for like $10 or something like that. And I've been meaning to watch it again, but I just haven't gotten around to it. I probably should have watched that before this, so I could talk more about that version of Batman. But
right,
because we're really just celebrating Batman in this episode, honestly. I mean, the main focus is on the movie, but you can't really look at what you have now without looking at what happened before it and pave the way for it, so to speak.
Right.
So.
I think it's interesting, though, when we look and see how the character has evolved over the years, right? That we know that he was born in the comics, right? And that's where he really got his start. But to see how he goes from the Adam West, which is kind of cartoony, a little bit silly and ridiculous. I mean, I still remember laughing as a kid when I would see like the weapons, like swords, and they would like wobble.
Yeah,
like they were made out of rubber, because we knew it was totally fake.
Oh yeah,
it was sort of like the professional wrestling of of the superhero world.
And
but
that's
also, yeah.
Speaking on wrestling for just a second, like that's what I loved about going to live shows too. Is you could see spots on TV as well, but like especially in person, where big, huge guy drop kicks another guy, and you can see he misses by like this much.
Right.
But you're still like, and it's fun to point that out. It's like, he messed up. But it's still goofy and fun to watch.
Right. So you know what's crazy is before we started here, I went and Googled the Batman and asked to see how many people have played the character of Batman up to and including Robert Pattinson. And
as Corey points out, there was a movie from the 1940s.
Yeah. Oh, there have been a ton of people who have played Batman over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them I don't even recognize. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, there's been quite a few. Like I haven't actually gone to look and see all of them. I just know like the main 5 or 6.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like 59 different people who've played Batman.
Jeez.
Over
and a lot of those are animated as well. People like, what is his name? Oh my gosh!
You know who it is?
Kevin Conroy.
That's right.
Yeah. I'm like, I had the name, and and we saw his first version of live action Batman. Well, Bruce Wayne, in DC's Crisis on Infinite Earths.
That's right.
That our good friend Mark Guggenheim was a showrunner for.
Yeah, I think some other noble people that have voiced Batman already. People like Jensen Ackles from Supernatural.
I know of one that is probably on your list here, Dietrich Bader, who was a version of Batman somewhere. It was some kind of animated Batman. And also Will Arnett did Lego Batman. I know that.
Yeah. Other versions of people, Jason Sudeikis.
Okay.
Voiced him. Josh Hutcherson, like from the Hunger Games.
Okay, yeah.
Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, he's the newest edition, I believe.
Yeah.
There's going to be a newer animated Batman that he's going to voice.
Will Arnett. I think you mentioned that.
Jimmy Kimmel. He was Lego Batman, I believe.
Yeah. Who else? Trying to just go and pick out the ones that people might actually recognize.
I knew of Dietrich Bader because I didn't realize he had voiced a Batman. I don't know which version it was, but I knew people might know him from the Drew Carey show as Oswald, and he's been in other stuff. I'm a Kevin Smith fan, so he people that know those movies know him as like the security guard. So I mean, there have been quite a few that really blew me away. I'm like, this guy, really?
Right. But I didn't know that there were 50, almost 60 different people who've played Batman over the years. That's pretty crazy.
And whoever that guy was that did the little silhouette Batman and Batwoman, I don't know who that guy is. But...
Well, in Batwoman, we actually got that one was played by Warren Christie.
Okay, I forgot. I haven't watched Batwoman this season, but I do remember looking back when we had the fake Bruce Wayne.
Right.
And that was supposed to be what the real Bruce Wayne was like.
Right. I mean, the idea is he's fake Bruce Wayne because he looks exactly like the real one. So at least we know what Bruce Wayne was supposed to look like. But the idea, the dance that they did just to avoid bringing in Batman in the Batwoman series.
And still to this day, like they're doing a new series they're supposed to be doing soon, Gotham Knights.
Right.
No Batman. It's like, I get it. You want to preserve Batman. And that's the same way they treated Superman for a long time on the CW. It took them literally 20 years almost to put Superman on screen again, I think. Maybe not quite 20 years, but close. Because, we got Smallville in 2001. Can't show him. And then leading up, the first live action Superman, as far as a television series we got, was Superman and Lois, Supergirl, but that version of Superman. So hopefully they come around on Batman at some point too.
I hope so. I don't know why it's taken them so long, other than maybe they don't own the rights to the character, and that's the reason for it. But man,
it's Warner Brothers, so like they could do it. Jeff Johns,
it would make. I don't know why they wouldn't. It would be like a really smart idea to finally pop that cherry and make it happen.
Oh yeah, same with Green Lantern. It's like you can't show Green Lantern unless your name is Jeff Johns.
Right.
Which I know he did a lot of work on Green Lantern and things like that, but how good would it be?
I know. Before we go any further, I think that we should really kind of pay respect to the original creators of Batman, both Bob Kane, so artist Bob Kane and writer Bill Finger. These
Bill,
were the guys.
Yeah, Bill doesn't get enough credit for Batman either, because that's something I learned recently. I was always sort of Bob Kane, and then turns out like this dude had more really to do with the creation of Batman, and he didn't really get as much of the credit for it.
Yeah,
so I think I don't know where I saw that. I think I saw it in a documentary or something like that.
Right. So we're going to make sure that both of them get a shout out, though I don't think they're with us anymore.
I don't think so.
Because we're talking about this is Batman did not debut until the 27th issue of the comic book Detective Comics on March 30th, 1939.
And I believe he's older than Superman, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not sure.
Because I was thinking Superman was 40s, but I could be wrong on that, because I don't really know my comic book history all that well. So I don't want to, don't quote me on it or anything, but I know it was, gosh, now I really am wondering when was it?
So let me go ahead and answer your question. Superman debuted in Action Comics #1 in June of 1938.
Oh,
and a story by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster.
Okay, yeah, I was off by a couple years, but
and another little addition here, though I know we're talking about Batman, but it said he's generally considered the first comic book superhero. So there was no set formula for how this kind of character should behave.
And I think when you're talking about DC Comics, especially, you can't really have a DC Comics without Batman, because like Detective Comics was, the thing, but it wasn't huge. And Batman came along, and somehow that caught on, and people liked Batman, and so it kind of grew from there. And then you had Superman and all this other stuff branch off that. And really, DC Comics wouldn't be anything without the Detective Comics, which is really where they get their name.
Yeah.
So
I feel good.
I was just going to say, going back a minute ago, speaking of showrunners, I do want to make an announcement here. We posted it online already, but I wanted to throw this out there. Live on Sunday, May the 1st, we'll have at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific, we will have the Flash showrunner, Eric Wallace. And let me take this banner off so you can see his name. You can't see his name. It's covered up by the banner, but he's the showrunner for the Flash that's just came back on the CW this past Wednesday night. And I'm really excited about that one.
Well, and we've been waiting on this interview here for a hot minute. So
yeah, since about December, I think, or November.
Right. So I'm excited about it. So many questions. I think that was something that some people had mentioned before, that they really wanted a chance to pick his brain a little bit. So if you guys are joining us tonight live and you want to be there to go and ask questions of Eric Wallace about things that are going on currently right now in the Flash, that's the episode to check in. So
or coming up.
Coming up.
Because I've been reading the news, just taking a pause from Batman for just a second. My dad would say, "What do you got, a mouse in your pocket?" But I was reading some words from Eric Wallace, and he said that they're treating the season 8 finale of Flash, as if it would serve as a series finale, because there's no official confirmation or anything of a season 9 renewal, so they don't know where it stands as of right now. And so it's good to know that they have it in a position where they could end it if they have to. But I would love to get to the point to where we can ask him, anything we can think of. And if you're, as Chris said, if you're watching live and you want to talk about the Flash or ask questions, tune in. And if you don't necessarily like the Flash, but you know somebody that does, let them know, like, hey, you like that Flash TV show, right? Well, these two guys are doing this show, and they're talking to the boss behind the Flash. So we're talking to the lightning rod himself.
Yeah. What I'm going to say real fast before we continue on with Batman, just because they don't yet have season 9 picked up yet, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the end of the show.
Right.
But as we know, with a lot of CW shows, not very many of them make it to 9. Usually they get to 7 or 8, and that's when they run out of gas.
With the exception of 2 shows which aren't really connected to this current universe.
Right. You're
but
talking
loosely.
about Smallville, and you're talking about
Yeah.
Supernatural.
Smallville ran for 10 years. Supernatural ran for 36 seasons.
Right. It sure felt like it.
Yeah, 15, I think it was.
I do. Yeah, 15. But
Yeah,
I think those shows, though, in my opinion, those were the exception, not the rule.
Right.
And I don't know. I think at some point you get to a certain point in the show, and you're starting to look for an exit strategy.
And if you think about it, Smallville and Supernatural were really the first two big shows on CW in that sort of style, like comic book type shows. Now they did other little shows on CW and stuff like that back before CW formed and all that kind of stuff. And there is also word that, the CW is being sold. So who's to say what happens if whoever buys CW, will they keep the programming? Will they pick up The Flash, Superman, Lois, any of these shows? Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to stay on there. So we'll see. Hopefully, but you're right. Most shows don't hit past 8 or 9. So far, Flash is tied, or will actually surpass Arrow with more episodes.
Right.
Because Arrow ended season 8 at 5 episodes or 6, something like that. And Flash will have a full, I don't know how many, maybe 18, 16, something like that.
So I've got to say for myself, wherever they decide to go and end the show, I just hope they end it well. That's the big thing.
Hopefully. I know that they've teased that Eobard Thawne Reverse Flash has a big part of it. It's centered around it always is. It's always centered around that classic feud, because you've got Batman and the Joker, you've got Superman and Lex Luthor, and then you have the Flash and the Reverse Flash. I mean, it's just kind of one of those timeless stories.
Right. All right, let's go and bring it back to Batman, because I know that really is our focus here for tonight. And let's try to keep it focused just on the Batman, the movie, because I think there's. So let's talk about what were you expecting, Steven, when you went into the movie? Did you have any expectations, and how did you kind of feel afterward?
I was expecting that they didn't cut our scenes. As you see here, Corey released the first ever viewed poster for the Batman.
I know. I had a cameo and everything.
Yeah, I did too. I think I played the silent guy. You were standing there talking, and I was in the corner that didn't say anything. But they cut that. But no, all joking aside, I didn't really go in with any expectations. I was like, it's another Batman. I had the same thought of why we've had 30 reboots of Batman. We just had Ben Affleck. We just had, before that, we had the Chris Nolan movies. And before that, we had, how many times are we going to keep doing this? But I know a lot of the people online were hating on it because it's here comes Bat Sparkle or Sparkle Man or and I made those jokes too.
Yeah.
Because, you think of Robert Pattinson, you think of the Twilight movies. You don't think of
course
he's going to be a badass Batman. But honestly, I was pretty surprised with it. I did not expect it to be that long. I knew going into the theater that it was 3 hours, but driving to the theater, I didn't really realize until we had talked about it. I'm like, it's 3 hours? All right. I broke the law. I smuggled in a Coca-Cola.
No.
I guess that's not breaking the law, but I'm going to watch the Batman. I don't want to pay $75 for a bottle of water or whatever.
Steven, I believe that paying high prices at the concession stand, that seriously, that is a part of the experience.
It is, and I haven't done it in a long time. But I was kind of in a rush. I'm like, I don't want to stand in line. I'm just gonna grab this soda but there actually was a guy taking tickets this time, so that was a surprise. Normally, there's nobody there. They're just like, okay, go ahead. I'm like, do you even know if I bought a ticket? You didn't even see me. But no, the movie itself, I wasn't really expecting much because I didn't know how to really look at Robert Pattinson as Batman. What I'd seen of the trailers and the pictures, everything looked pretty cool. I didn't really know how much of the villains were going to be in there. I knew we were going to have Penguin, and I knew we would be seeing Catwoman. But other than that, and Catwoman wasn't really a villain, and I guess she never really has been. She's been more of an anti-hero kind of thing with her own villainous evil side, but not quite all the way bad. But yeah, as far as expectations, I really didn't have any. Honestly, I didn't know what to think. I didn't want to build it up in my head too much or trash it too much. I just wanted to kind of go in there without thinking and just let it happen. and then kind of react.
I wish that I could have gone in with zero expectations, but I think that we all go into situations with at least some type of expectation in our heads, either that we're going to like it or we're going to hate it,
Mm-hmm.
or as much as you try to have an open mind about something, you bring in your own baggage, and
Or
you
cokes in my situation.
in your case, yeah, you're smuggling stuff in. Um, that said, again, I was really happy.
Yeah,
And
it was great.
I watched it with my wife, and for her, the Michael Keaton era for her, that's her favorite, right? So Michael Keaton, her favorite Batman, and Michelle Pfeiffer,
Oh yeah.
definitely by far her favorite Catwoman. And by the way, I know we're kind of slowly making our way into this. I still feel like, honorable mentions to everybody who's played Catwoman before.
Oh yeah.
Even Eartha Kitt back in the Adam West era. Um, I still find that when I compare all versions of people who play Catwoman to Michelle Pfeiffer, she still kind of rises to the top for me.
I mean, Corey mentions here he was, I was not as thrilled going in, but the last 25 minutes it really felt like Batman. And see, and that's another thing too for me. A lot of people have their strong opinions on some of these movies, and I really don't, because I don't follow some of the characters as much as some people have. Like, I didn't really grow up reading comics. I had some comics, some Spider-Man and maybe a couple of Batman, but I didn't really collect comics or read comics all that much. So I didn't like with the Transformers films. I could see in some of the later Transformers how they were like, oh, those are terrible. But the first couple ones, I was like, oh, it's all right. Same with Batman or Superman or any of the movies. I loved Justice League and I loved the Snyder Cut. I love both Suicide Squads. I haven't hated any of the DC movies so far, or Marvel movies for that matter, that I've actually seen. So I guess maybe it's a blessing to not really know the source material too much, because
I mean, we've done this podcast for 2 years. I think that you and I are about as emotionally invested in this stuff as I think anybody can be. I think what separates you from a lot of people is that you're not like overly critical or judgmental about stuff.
I guess I would be, depending on what it was. Like,
it could be.
Because if they did, I don't know, with the Power Rangers is the closest connection I have to, like, because they're not going to reboot professional wrestling. They can't really do that. But when they rebooted the Power Rangers films in 2017, I went to the theater to see it twice. I actually had a tear in my eye the first time I watched it, and my dad teased me forever. Anytime I saw something Power Rangers in a store, or he saw it, he'd be like, look, Power Ranger, you need a tissue? Like, he would tease me forever about that. It was just a pure nostalgic hit for me.
Right.
And that's, it kind of reminded me of being like 9 years old again. And that, I think I could get critical over things I was that closely attached to. And I think that's what, like you said, what separates me is another thing is, these other people have more emotional and nostalgic connections to these things, and I don't have as many. Now, Superman is a little bit different. I've grown to become more attached to Superman over the years. Smallville kind of started it, and it also kind of reminds me of my brother, who was a huge Superman fan. So anything Superman, I'm like, he might have liked this. I really think he would have loved the Crisis on Infinite Earths Tom Welling appearance. He would have probably loved the Batman and all that, because he loved DC. He loved Marvel. He liked pretty much a lot of stuff we like and we talk about.
I think the big thing that I've got to go into movies like this on is, number one, each actor that plays the role kind of brings a different perspective, as does each director who takes on the film. They give it their own spin and their own character. And I have to kind of walk into it going, this is just simply one different perspective on a character that I know really well. On the other side of things, we all have to understand that the multiverse exists.
Exactly.
And while your favorite version of Batman might exist in some other parallel Earth, that doesn't mean that we're necessarily watching the same Batman on the same Earth. I think they all can exist in continuity, and I think it's okay to have your favorites.
Yeah. I think the idea of a multiverse originally probably started as a lazy way out. Not really. I don't want to say lazy, but like they kind of write themselves in a corner. Like, oh crap, we want to do this now, we can't because this guy's dead and this guy's multiverse. It's not.
Right.
It's a different one. And people complain about reboots, but it's like, dude, it's multiversal. Just it's a different version. Just say that. And people that really are diehard into the characters and read the comics seem to not. I don't know. It's funny. There is a section of the audience that are huge comic book fans that complain about reboots, and it's like if anybody, you should understand that like these books all have different iterations. You have like Spider-Man, for instance, Amazing, Spectacular, 2099, all these different versions of in Batman 2, Superman. All of them have multiple versions. And that's how I started looking at the movies as well, because it's like, okay, well, I might not like this one, but I like this one, and this is my Batman universe. And now they're even tying these multiversal ideas from almost 30 years ago into the current canon of some of these stories, as we know, with Michael Keaton returning as Batman for the Flash film later this year. And also the Batgirl project that they're working on right now. He's going to be in that as well.
I feel like at some point they're just going to be putting Michael Keaton's ashes into a Batman suit.
Probably.
I don't know. I don't know how old he is exactly, but he's got to be getting up there. So.
And Corey makes a decent point. If he said for him, it wasn't really about the source material. He just didn't know any of the actors besides Kravitz, only known from X-Men, and Pattinson, only from Twilight. And it took him a while to see those characters and not the actual actors. And that's another good point. With a reboot, it's like if you don't know them, if they're kind of either new or only known for like one or two major things, you only see them as that.
Right.
Until like you get into it. And that's why, like I said with Ben Affleck, you see Ben Affleck, you're like, ugh, it's like all these romantic comedies and all these dramatic role. Like he's not Batman. Why? And you didn't really have time to really get to know him as Batman. Same with
it's funny that you mentioned that because there were a couple people that were like Colin Farrell playing Penguin.
Yeah, like what? That was a big difference.
It's huge.
Oh my gosh!
Sometimes you get actors and they essentially are playing themselves 40 times, and they're never any different. They always speak the same way. Yeah, their characters name something, but it's like Will Ferrell, right? Will Ferrell is the same person in every single movie.
And Jim Carrey to a degree,
right?
And there's several we could name, but yeah.
But Colin Farrell, I think, is an example of an actor who he disappears into his role.
And literally,
I was thinking about the same thing with the guy who played Commissioner Gordon during the Christian Bale era. I can't remember his name right now, but
oh yeah, oh my gosh, I can't either.
But same kind of thing that I've always appreciated actors who you recognize their name, but it's not about the actor; it's about the character. And I think that's what we see with Colin Farrell as the Penguin. And he wasn't this over the top, super comic booky, ridiculous character. He was more scarred. I liked the nod to him being the Penguin when his legs were tied up.
Gary Oldman is
Gary Oldman, exactly. Yeah. But
I noticed that too with Penguin. I was like, the whole time I'm picturing Danny DeVito, and I'm like, okay, I know this isn't going to be that over the top, but I mean, Danny DeVito was great as Penguin, but
he was fantastic. I mean, I think that, but I think there was a certain aesthetic that was being created. We remember that, who wrote and who directed the Keaton Batman.
Tim Burton.
Yeah, Tim Burton.
Yeah,
who
it was different.
It was. There was a certain aesthetic that he is known and respected for, very different from the Batman, right? And I thought that the Christian Bale, Christopher Nolan Batman, I thought that one was more realistic and gritty. And I realized in this one, they've made this one even that much more gritty.
Yeah, and that's another thing with me going into movies. I don't watch it as much as a fan as I do as like a writer, even though I've only written the one little screenplay and it was just a goofy little project. But I've learned so much about writing and story development that I can see things in movies and TV before they happen. But if I go to write something down, all that knowledge, it's gone. So
Right.
it's a weird like disconnect from paper to screen. It's like I can see it, but I can't. So a lot of beats, like the Suicide Squad, I saw the ending coming. I watched TV the same way. So maybe that's another reason I don't really dive too much into the characters, because I'm just like, okay, how is this act going to transition? And then how are they going to double back? You know, I analyze it too much, I think is what it is. I need to learn to just turn that off and just absorb it. I might notice things more or appreciate certain things more. I did notice, you know, it kind of goes along any other DC project. It's like they didn't turn the lights on it. They saved money in the budget by not buying light bulbs.
They did. I mean, he's the Dark Knight, but that was taking it ridiculous. It was like I was watching the movie with my eyes closed. And sometimes,
again, Corey is spot on. I think this is literally what they did. They shot the film in 4K, but through a wet, dirty window. Now, I'm not downing the thing, because it did look great, but it did rain quite a bit in the movie. And it was funny because as soon as the movie was over, we went outside. It was raining in real life. So
right,
he's vengeance. He is here, looking around.
Clearly, Gotham City is modern day Seattle.
Yeah, I was gonna say it has to be over in Washington State or something like that, because it always rains in Gotham City.
Yeah,
and it's always nighttime. Is it near Alaska where it's never daytime? Because it's always nighttime and raining in Gotham City, it seems like.
Well, again, if it was during the daytime, then Robert Pattinson would absolutely sparkle. I'm just throwing that out there.
That's true.
You know,
more evidence that it's the same character, because you only really see him at night.
He's ignoring the sun. Yeah,
it's there.
So a couple of details though that we haven't talked about yet. You mentioned how much money that it has made so far.
Yeah.
Right now, IMDb has it rated as 8.4 out of 10, which I find that a little bit low.
A little bit. I would give it probably a 9, maybe close to that.
Yeah. 91% who watched it liked it.
Okay.
So IMDb seems to have rated them a little bit lower. They're like the Russian judges right now.
I'm wondering. I didn't think to look up what their Rotten Tomatoes score would be right now.
Rotten Tomatoes score is 85%.
85? Okay, well,
85.
I mean, they're pretty critical. They really are. Rotten Tomatoes is very critical, because, I mean, it's such a weird scale. I would love to know, like, as far as the critic scores on there, what their logic is, or what their criteria is for what's good or fresh. Because you'll see a movie like The Batman, and it's amazing, gets like an 85 or 84, and then you see Jackass gets like a 90-something, and it's like, how is that like a bunch of naked guys running around like slapping each other and doing goofy, funny stuff while entertaining? How is that fresher than something like The Batman? I don't know.
Well, I think that first and foremost, it does come into the realm of expectation. You walk in to a Jackass movie expecting to see idiocy, right? And they deliver on idiocy, right?
They really do.
Nobody's expecting high-end cinematography or anything else like that. They're not looking for story or characterization. They're looking for ridiculousness and humor and something that's going to shock them.
That's true.
That's what they're looking for. But I think we do hold stories like The Batman to a higher standard, and I think as we should be. If we're going to add to the universe of these superheroes that we care about, I think that we owe it to those characters and to the fans to make sure that it's quality. I'm really glad to say that they didn't just cobble this movie together at the last minute. They really did treat it with the respect that I think all the characters deserve.
They did, and I noticed a lot of people complain. It's like a couple of points in the movie where he seemed inexperienced or whatever.
Because he was.
And he was, yeah. This is his second year as Batman. So he's not really, like, the one in particular, I know we're kind of jumping forward into the story a little bit, but the first time he uses the bubble suit thing, wingsuit. I don't want to say bubble suit. I'm thinking of Free Guy. I watched Free Guy yesterday. He had the bubble suit.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a good movie. We'll talk about that at some point, I think. But yeah, he jumps off the thing and he has the wingsuit, and then he hits the parachute and hits the head on the bridge, hits the car, hits the street. It was a funny moment, and I think it was done purely for comic relief, I think, because but in 2 years, like you're not. This is the first time, obviously, that he's done that. So it's like, oh, I was a little disappointed that he had a full wingsuit instead of just using the cape to glide, like Batman would. But again, it's a new version of Batman. It's a different universe. So.
Well, and you think about it, Christian Bale's version had Lucas Fox to go and build all of his tech. It was very obvious in this movie at this point in his progress that it's just him and Alfred. And it almost seems like even Alfred wasn't very involved.
Right.
It's just him, doing all the work and everything else. Again, I just thought that was a really neat thing. And again, perspective here is everything because it's early in his crime fighting career. There's just a lot of things that he's still working out about how he even his work-life balance between his role as Batman and his role as Bruce Wayne, that he didn't have a lot of distinction between the two. He didn't know how to separate who he was during the day as Bruce Wayne from who he was at night as Batman.
And I love the one, like, you see him, well, I was going to say you see him more as Batman, but I think it's a nice mix of both. I love the little, I don't even know what you would call it anymore. I forgot the term that you would call it in like writing film and stuff, but like, it was like a visual, oh gosh, what is it? It's like a visual symbol. And like the little kid he keeps seeing throughout the movie, he saw himself in that. Right. And I really loved how they kept bringing that up. They didn't like shove it in your face the entire time, but they did kind of pop up like, here he is. He saved somebody, and here's this kid. And then later on, he sees the kid again and again. And it's like, you could tell like he's thinking, like, this is me. I'm seeing myself. This is why I do this. I got to keep going and all that kind of thing. Especially when everybody like was not after him, but everybody always hates the Batman. As far as the people within Gotham City, they're like, it's the Batman, get that vigilante. Like, but he still has the no kill rule, I think, because he hasn't killed anybody so far. I don't think. I don't know.
No, I mean, I thought that they made it really clear in the movie. Catwoman went to go and kill him.
Yeah.
Kill her father, Falcone, and he stops her.
That's right.
And
he actually struggled to stop her too.
It really was.
She almost went through it.
Yeah. It didn't save Falcone's life, but I think that at this point, Bruce Wayne understands the real cost of taking a life. And
I got to take a second to say how great John Turturro is as an actor, because that dude, you see him in a movie like we talked about this at the theater. It's like in this movie, he was tremendous. He was such a great character, and he performed it very well. But then you look at Transformers, like the first Transformers movie, he was some goofy little bumbling agent, and it's like he was a cartoon character essentially. And then this one, he was a serious actor. And it just kind of shows the range that he could play goofy and serious, and I like him. I like him a lot.
Yeah, my wife and I she recognized him but didn't know where from, and I was like, he's from the You Don't Mess with the Zohan, right? That Adam Sandler movie. It's funny where certain characters from. That said, I had only known him from rather kind of less serious roles, and so seeing him as this very serious crime boss was pretty cool.
Oh, forget about that one too, Corey. He puts out Turturro always being Mr. Deeds.
There we go.
Totally forgot about that one.
Yeah,
that's what shocked me so much about him in this movie, because he did such a good job. I loved that. I loved to hate that character. He was such a bad guy, and he played it so well.
He really did.
It was really nice contrast from what he normally plays, which is the goofy, kind of bumbling, kind of snide little evil guys.
So one thing we haven't talked about yet is not only is this version of the Batman, gritty and very, very painfully realistic, it also takes away a lot of the elements of the supernatural, or the things that we would say that's not real, that's not realistic.
Right.
They strip that out of there. Like you think about the origin of Catwoman, they don't go into that at all. Right?
No, she's just really agile and can fight, and
Right.
There's no mystical, like, 30 cats ate me alive and I just reappeared for no reason.
Right. I was thinking that in this version of Batman, if you get pushed out a window and get licked by cats, you're still dead.
Yeah, and
And
that's my
so
only really piece of criticism for the Michelle Pfeiffer Catwoman, and it's not her fault. It's just the story of like, okay, well, I would even buy that if those cats had rolled around in some toxic goo and then licked her. That I would have bought because it made sense.
but
But
you
even
can
without that goofy element, like you're right, that this movie didn't have anything close to like, oh, that's not realistic.
right. I think that is really when we look at a lot of comic book origins, though. Barry Allen getting struck by lightning and getting covered in chemicals to turn him into a speedster.
Hmm.
We see so many origin stories that are unbelievable, and yet we accept it to be true. Um, and I just think that was kind of a refreshing thing here in this um, that they didn't go that route. They created a character whose origin made sense in a believable way.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was just me, but I'm sure other people had thought this. You know, when Batman first goes to her house and he sees all the cats, like, you got a lot of cats. And that got a lot of laughs in the theater, and it was kind of a funny line. But then at the end of the movie, when she kind of leaves, you see the one cat. Like, what did she do? Did she just abandon like the other six cats? Like, what? I don't know. It didn't bug me that bad, but I'm like, wait a minute, she had a lot more than one. I don't know. Just a funny little thing in my own mind that I caught.
Yeah. So I was familiar with Zoe Kravitz,
Hmm.
before going into this movie. I'm actually pretty familiar with her parents. Lenny Kravitz, if you
Yeah.
enjoyed his music at all, great musician, really, really like his stuff. And then his mother had been on the Cosby Show as one of the kids. And so, talk about having that
Okay.
kind of two
The
well-known
pudding
famous
pops.
parents.
Sorry. The Batman. I watched it with my pudding pop. No, sorry. I'm terrible. Um,
That was your Bill Cosby impersonation.
yeah.
Yeah,
Not very good, but I mean, if you want to call it Bill Cosby, I guess. You can.
right. But I think at the same time, you talk about legacy celebrities, people who I think they've got you know, big big shoes to fill in,
Mhm.
for their parents. I really think Zoe did a great job, and I'd always seen her as really being more of a younger actress, and I
Yeah.
feel like what I had seen of her in Divergent, what I had seen of her in X-Men First Class, this really seemed to be
Okay.
a fully realized, very adult, version of her.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about Divergent. I had seen like that first one, I think, and now I'm like, I know I'd seen her in something else, but I'd forgotten about like, X-Men and stuff like that. So I wasn't too familiar with anybody in that movie except, well, not anybody, but a few of them. But it's interesting too. Like I hadn't realized her mom was on the Cosby Show, and just like Robert Pattinson's dad was Dracula, because a lot of people don't know that Dracula's last name is Pattinson. So Dracula Pattinson, he's known over the world as being the most deadly vampire. So that might not be true, but it
You're
seems
just
like it's.
you're
Yeah,
just making stuff up now.
I think it might be true. Probably
Yeah,
not. But
good old Nosferatu Pattinson.
yeah, Transylvania.
Right.
That's but yeah, I mean, it really was like one of those like fully grown up. Like, I love the realistic. Like, what am I trying to say? Like, just the feel, the overall, the point you made of this could happen. Like that literally could happen. That movie.
Okay, so it's funny what things people pick out. My wife and I watched the movie, and
Mhm.
she enjoyed it, but the one part that she thought was ridiculous, we're watching, and it's that part when um, the Riddler had put all of those trucks with bombs
Oh
against the
yeah,
seawall,
yeah.
and they all blew up, and then the ocean rushes in to the city, and that's the part that my wife got mad at. She's like, "That's so stupid. Who would build a city below sea level like that. And New Orleans.
Yeah,
um,
well,
I mean,
good point.
I knew that was totally ridiculous, and at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but they do that all the time, you know. So it's funny what things certain people pick out, and 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 we were joking about it. I'm like, um, if only they had like planned for the possibility that a crazed lunatic might want to try to go and blow up all the levees. Maybe they would have built like an anti-bomb levee or something like that. Um, so anyway, we got a chuckle
Yeah,
out of it.
I thought that was pretty funny too. I mean, and another like kind of going along with that, I had a little not a gripe, but a little thing like, wait a second, like when the water floods in this building, the Gotham Square Garden, which is completely different from Madison Square Garden, nothing alike at all. That was a weird name, like the Gotham Square Garden. All right, but no, that building is huge. Is the point? It's a big
Right.
arena. And it's full, almost like halfway up the building, full of water. That's a ton of water. The city is literally underwater. And we see shots of dogs swimming and all this stuff after. But at the end of the movie, they drive motorcycles on the street. Like, where did the water go in one day? Like, did it all wash away? Did they rebuild the thing and then it's all fine again? It was a little weird. It wasn't a major gripe, but I do want to show the Riddler because I mentioned earlier, Robert had commented and said, the Riddler was perfect casting. And I realized I hadn't prepared a picture of that, and I wish I would have. So we're going to look at that real quick here.
Yeah.
On the right-hand side, we see the Riddler, and it's a different look. I know a lot of people criticize, like, that's weird. It's got like a leather mask and a jacket and all this stuff. But I feel like if the Riddler were real today, he would probably look like that. And when he's finally unmasked, we see this nerdiest, goofiest, dorkiest looking guy, and it's just perfect. I think that was the perfect thing that they could have done.
So the actor is Paul Dano. Again, not somebody that I'm familiar with, but I guess not only is he an actor, but he's also a musician.
Okay, cool. I didn't really know that because I didn't know much about him at all, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know him. He's certainly not somebody that I recognize. Outside of this movie.
Terrence Jones is commenting, "Hey guys, I saw the movie last week. I thought it was great. So glad they created a Batman movie where they brought out the gritty side of Gotham, showcasing Bruce's detective abilities." And that's another good point that like a lot of I haven't seen the Nolan movies in a while, but this Batman, he really did seem like a true detective. Like they really showcased that. Kind of like when we watch The Flash and you see him in the early seasons as a good CSI. And
right.
Then, say season 4 or 5, he doesn't really do any You forget he works for the police department at all.
It's like they sucked out his brain.
Yeah, so it was nice to see this Batman be so detective.
No, I agree. The idea that he's at least clever enough to figure out the riddles, though too slow to figure them out before anybody dies.
Right.
But you're right that he really was. Batman is considered to be one of the smartest people on the planet, and I think that Robert Pattinson and the way that they wrote him, I think certainly supports that. It is a quality that I think kind of is lacking sometimes in other versions. They're much more into his ability to fight than they are in his mind, and I thought that was something pretty amazing. So.
The Chris Nolan movies really focus on the fighting. They had these whole montages where he goes and trains and all this and that. And that's all great. And even Michael Keaton, like he didn't seem much like a detective. He just kind of like, oh, Joker, huh? Oh, Catwoman, huh? Oh, the Penguin. The end. Which, I mean, those movies were better than that. But I mean, yeah, I think this one might have showcased his detective abilities the most as far as a live action film.
Yeah, I think so too. The other thing that I wanted to talk about before we kind of delve a little more into the Riddler, and I know it's just slightly off topic, but I'm gonna talk about it anyway because it's our show. But I think that one of the things that I just really enjoy about about this particular movie is there were a lot of things they really didn't rehash too much. So many times we watch the Batman and we've got to go back to the street, back to where mom and dad get shot, back to the
Yeah.
funeral. We've got to go and him falling into the well and flying to the Batcave.
And then
There's
Lassie comes in and helps him.
I know, or Flipper, but I think what I really enjoyed was that they kind of started out and they kind of expect that we're already familiar with that origin of who he is and how he came to be.
Right. And I love that about it. And same with Spider-Man and the MCU and stuff. Like a lot of these characters have already had these stories rehashed so many times. Did we really need another Martha scene?
No.
Did we really, and I'm glad. I mean, it's nice to see those. And it wouldn't be bad, I think, maybe in the next movie to have maybe a 5-minute flashback scene of this is what happened the night when he finds who killed her or who killed both of his parents, like things like that. He found out pretty much who killed him, but you know what I mean? Like if there's a link and it makes sense for the story, go back and show parts of that. But if not, then there's no point of rehashing because we already know that story.
Right. We know that that instance for him was very formative to who he ultimately becomes as Batman. But I thought it was very refreshing that they didn't need to go and spend a considerable amount of time. There was enough that was going on already. They didn't need to go and do another flashback.
Yeah. I really liked how they handled the villains because
I agree.
With other movies like Spider-Man 3, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, there was too much going on. Now, No Way Home, there was a ton going on in that movie as well, but it worked. They had all the right pieces in the right places, I think. Yeah. And with the Batman, same thing. They really only had, one major comic book type of villain was like the Penguin, and he really hadn't been established yet. So he was kind of there, but not there. Right. It was like the journey to get to the Penguin is what this movie was. So it was kind of like a prologue to that, which was nice.
Yeah. So Paul Dano's Riddler, when I compare him to previous versions, I think probably the most readily available example of the Riddler is Jim Carrey's version, right?
Which was different.
I think their depictions are drastically different. Jim Carrey's Riddler was almost like a version of the Joker. I mean, it was over the top, it was comical, it was silly, laughable, that kind of character. This Riddler though was not that at all. And I think that Paul Dano brought a real terrifying quality to Riddler that I didn't think was capable of that character. So that yeah, go ahead.
I love how they balanced it too. Like you left the audience kind of as the perspective of Bruce Wayne. Like, who is this guy? We're trying to figure it out as well. We're trying to solve the riddles. We're trying to figure out who this guy is. Is it a cop? Is it this guy? Is it that guy? Is it his mom? Is it really Martha the whole time? Like, we don't know that. So, I mean, it was nice to see that they revealed him at the perfect point and not pushed it too far or not kind of did it too early. Right. I think the timing of that and the pacing was perfect for his reveal. Let's see. Corey says, like, he didn't have a skin tight ? Suit, so how would we know who he was? Exactly. It wasn't this goofy version. And not to say that the Jim Carrey Riddler was terrible. I mean, it wasn't a great movie overall, but I didn't mind the Riddler as much. Honestly, when I was a kid seeing that movie, I thought he was the Joker. I really did.
Right.
But turns out he wasn't.
Well, and who doesn't like Jim Carrey? I mean, I think that they certainly made the character very likable and jovial, but not really, in my opinion, somebody to be feared, or he didn't really strike me all that much as a huge threat. But
Right,
this
because
this
somebody that
Riddler,
over the top, you would think you would be able to trip him up easier.
right? This Riddler, however, um, he's brilliantly intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
He's clearly a chess player. He's thinking multiple steps ahead, and even even Batman, doesn't understand just
Right.
how deep these plans have gone.
He's in a way he's kind of almost smarter than Batman, but not. I don't know because he planned every little detail. He knew every beat. He knew what he was doing. He let himself get captured. He let himself get unmasked. And I like the fact that the character had no physical attributes whatsoever. Like if it came down between a fight between the Riddler, like just without the riddles and without the cages and contraptions, just the guy and the little kid throughout the movie, the kid would have beaten him up.
Yeah.
And I like that about him. He's just the least threatening person in the entire movie, but yet the most dangerous in a weird way. And that I really like that balance that they did.
Yeah. So I'm definitely brilliant. I in many ways I kind of feel like Batman and the Riddler are set up sort of as character foils.
Mhm.
They're both orphans in many ways. They're meant to they're very similar, and they both were led down dark paths. Ultimately, I think the number one, the fact that uh, that Bruce Wayne, was fortunate that his parents had money and that he had
Yeah,
Alfred to guide him. I think it helped to steer him in the right direction.
exactly. Because
Um,
had he not, he would have just been nothing.
yeah,
He would have been anything.
yeah. I think the Riddler in this case showcases an issue that maybe had his situation been different, he would have turned out differently. Uh,
Yeah.
but we see he's very much a product of his own environment. Uh, you know, do I think of him as being sympathetic? Um, I think there are plenty of people who have lousy childhoods and come from difficult backgrounds who are still good people, and um, the idea that he essentially becomes a terrorist, thinking himself inspired by Batman, um, that's taking things definitely a step too far.
And Corey, with another good point, the Batman's parents were more like Thomas Wayne from the Joker movie as well. In Bruce's mind, they were perfect, but everybody else, they were kind of a problem or the cause of their pain or whatever. And the whole sense of the father thing, it's like, oh, your dad screwed over my dad, so I'm going to kill you now. Like
There was this idea of unmasking people, right? Of bringing the truth into the light, and in one sense, I think that's not a bad thing, right? If you think that you're going to, you know, break the law, whoever you are, that eventually truth is going to come out. Um, the fact that he not only publicly shames them but then murders them at the same time, that's wrong.
I
And you
felt
think
like
about
somebody was going to come out and murder me for sneaking a soda in.
right,
Luckily, that did not happen.
right. You were just using that as you had a friend who did that once, and you told
Yeah,
them not to do that again, right?
yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. What have we not talked about in that movie?
Okay, so we haven't talked about the car.
The
Okay,
car. And I
um,
didn't know if you wanted to go ahead and like talk about the ending, go to the last scenes of the movie, or kind of go back to that once we get to the kind of end of the discussion, because
well,
involving the Riddler's identity and like him and Arkham.
let's go and talk about the car. That was
Okay.
another thing that my wife brought up. She's a huge car buff. There it is. I don't know why the Batman feels the need to always park his vehicles in a dark alley, but that's a pretty classic reveal. In this,
Maybe
yeah,
he thinks his parents are gonna haunt the alley and he wants to see how wants them to see how cool his car is.
I don't know. I think it's interesting that we've gotten so many different versions of what the Batmobile looks like. In this case, this is not the long, sleek version of the Batmobile from the Michael Keaton era that looks like a missile.
Or
Nor
like a
is this
rocket,
this is not the urban assault vehicle jumping rooftops of buildings from bales. This is this one is a Dodge. I think it was a Dodge Challenger.
I think so.
That's
I'm
been
not too
souped up.
sure. Yeah. I didn't know what to think about that because I first saw the promotional images in the trailers, and you see the car. It kind of wasn't a surprise by the time you got to the theater, but you didn't really see it fully in action yet. So hearing that car start up for the first time, hearing the engine roar, and just seeing it go, you forget that it's a muscle car, and you're like, all right, that's the Batmobile. Like, here he goes. They Corey. They stole his Batmobile from Joe Dirt.
Right.
Oh my gosh. You like him spinning tires, do you? I love Joe Dirt. But yeah, I really liked that car. I think it was great, and it makes sense for like this rich guy who is currently only in his second year of being Batman, and you could tell this is like one of the first times he's driven that car. So that car is relatively new to him, I would think. What other car would he pick? I mean, do you expect to see a little like here we go, it's the Mazda Miata Batmobile, or it's the Prius Batmobile?
He's in a smart car.
Yeah, like you wouldn't see that, or a scooter, or an electric car. Like you would expect a muscle car.
I think it makes sense that he would choose a classic car that he could soup up. Definitely, it's the kind of car that I would choose if I were going to be in a street race.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
So it was just I think it was a great choice, but it wasn't the iconic choice, right? I think that that a lot of us have a certain expectation of what the Batmobile looks like, right? It's that super long, shape, almost like a jet car.
Corey has the right idea. Batman 2 needs to have a Herbie the Love Bug Batmobile.
That would be epic. Yeah. We'll make that recommendation.
Yeah, we have friends at DC and Warner Brothers, so
absolutely. Well, I wanted to bring up. There's a character that that I saw at the beginning of the movie, and I thought it was interesting that they decided to use him. So his name is Jay Licurgo.
Okay.
Jay Licurgo, he was one of the guys that had half his face painted like with a skeleton.
Okay, yeah.
So right at the very beginning, but he actually is playing the new version of Robin in the Titans TV show.
Oh yeah, that's right. I knew I recognized that kid. I was like, okay. I was watching the movie. He's kind of the one that was hesitant. He was like, I don't know if we should be doing this. This is like, he's like the only one of the entire group that didn't get the crap kicked out of him by Batman.
Right.
And so he runs away. And I'm like, that kid looks so familiar. And until you just mentioned that, I had no idea why. But now I remember he was Tim Drake.
Yeah. So I was really surprised that in the Batman movie, they end up incorporating the very same actor that who eventually becomes Robin.
Now, what would be interesting, which I know this isn't going to be the case, because we've already seen the timelines don't line up, but it'd be really neat if that was Tim Drake from Titans.
Well, and you mentioned that to me, that would be a really interesting connection.
It would be. I don't think it could. There's no way it could actually be. Well, maybe. I don't know. The timelines, I don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
If their goal in this movie is to create a trilogy, and their idea is to eventually bring in a sidekick like Robin, subtly introducing a character who plays Robin in Titans, would be a very obvious nod.
Now, how cool would it be? Like, either way, if this kid comes back and plays Dick Grayson. That's so cool.
Right.
If he comes back and plays Jason Todd, okay. If he comes back and plays, I just said his
Damien.
name, Damien or Tim Drake, either one of them, it would be great. But how interesting would it be for the same guy that plays Tim Drake in Titans plays Tim Drake in the Batman franchise
Yeah.
at the same time? Now, I thought it would be neat if he were literally the same character, but the timelines don't add up because we know that the Bruce Wayne in Titans is much older.
Right.
It is, what, 50s, 60s maybe? And maybe even older than that. Because we've seen Bruce Wayne in Titans several times, and we know it's not the same Bruce Wayne. But that would be interesting if he played. And you're right. I mean, he comes in, sees Batman, goes, oh my gosh, he's badass. Oh, don't hurt me. And he runs away, almost to never be seen again. And it's like, wait a minute, what was the point in that? They emphasized that kid a lot in that moment. It wasn't a very long moment, but he had his own moment. Like, they wanted you to be separate, like see him as being separate from the rest of that crew. So there's definitely some kind of foreshadowing there.
Yeah,
I think for sure. I mean, it's not accidental. Like, oh, he just runs away, and no, there's something there.
So, I think the last person I want to talk about is Andy Serkis.
Okay.
So you know that he played the butler, Alfred.
Alfred.
Yeah, you think about all the people who've played that character over the years.
Oh my gosh.
You know, so we've seen so many different versions of people who've stepped into that role. But I thought he did a really great job. And again,
Yeah.
Andy Serkis has been around. He's done so many different movies over the years. Everything from Rise of the Planet of the Apes to Venom: Let There Be Carnage.
Okay, yeah. Almost forgot about that one.
Yeah, he's done a lot of different things. And then also remember that he was Gollum in Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
So
impressive, actually. That's a lot of different types, and it's a lot of different, like literally different characters.
Yeah.
I always love that when actors can play different things and they have such a good range of what they can do. Instead of, like you said earlier, just the same guy playing the same character over and over and over. Kind of like Ryan Reynolds. I love Ryan Reynolds, but everything he plays is kind of the same.
I agree.
A little different, but I mean, he has different aspects, but it's always that comedic, like sarcastic type of humor.
Right. Well, and I was thinking about Andy Serkis had played in
Deadpool? No.
No, close. He was in Black Panther.
Okay.
Right. He had played in Black Panther. He was the guy with the arm, and he was, over the top and ridiculous. Forget the name of the character that he had played. So, as far as actors that have kind of different sides to their personalities, I had kind of expected that from him, and then he ends up playing a very buttoned up kind of character as Alfred.
Come on, Bruce, let's go here. You got to get in your car and drive to the supermarket to get the bread. So I can make a sandwich. I'm too old to drive. I don't have my license anymore.
So I think Alfred, being very British, I think that Alfred, whoever plays him, has to be able to emote without going over the top. Alfred is much more witty and clever and understated, and so I think that he did a good job though with the character.
Yeah, he really did. I like that. I mean, it was a little bit different from a lot of the other Alfreds, and I always like that too. Like some people complain too much about like, oh, this character is too different from this guy. There's too much of a change from that one. And I like that, because if you had every version of something be exactly the same as the one before, then it wouldn't be worth doing.
Right.
I don't think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we pretty much covered all the main characters, all the little plots of the movie. Like overall, I think the story was great. It really was too dark, and then the whole meme about like, oh, DC movies are too dark. No, literally, they don't turn the lights on. Like,
Right.
it every scene in this movie, I'm just like, is the light broken in the screen projector? Like, what's going on? Like, but that's just the DC theme, the aesthetic of their movies. It's got to be raining, it's got to be nighttime, and people have to get punched a lot. And that's the overall feeling of the comics I've read from DC. More of a darker, with the exception of like the Flash, he's more like energetic because he's like lightning speed. But the darker tone overall is really a DC kind of thing.
I really do. Even the fact that the movie ultimately at the end makes a turn, I think that that was the kind of the realization that the Bruce Wayne goes through is it's not enough to inspire a terror, but he also realizes that he needs to inspire hope.
Mm-hmm. And we haven't really talked about how invulnerable this Batman seems to be. We saw him get shot several times. Now we just assume that, just like other versions of DC shows, his armor is bulletproof. But then he's sitting right next to that bomb that the Riddler blows up. That's in the car with the guy, and he gets it's like point blank. The bomb blows up, and it's not a scratch. I mean, I don't know how to feel about that. I guess his suit could be fireproof, and the only thing vulnerable is this little area right here. But his mask is just pure leather, is all it is, because you can see that. But maybe it's supposed to be bulletproof and fireproof. But his chin didn't get a scratch. I don't know. And then later on, we see in the big arena, he's on top of like the lighting thing, and he's up in these like rafters fighting off these seemingly army of Riddlers, the Riddler supporters from these online chat rooms who are coming to kind of finish the job. And we see all this going on, and he gets pretty much almost killed. And we see that he pulls something out and injects himself with it. That was interesting. And I hadn't thought about that until we were discussing the movie after, still in the theater, how that's essentially Venom from the comics. Like I'm not too familiar with it because it's been a long time since I've read any of the stories or seen it. But that's essentially kind of linked to Bane and everything, right? So that was really interesting to see them do that. Because now we think, how long has he been using this stuff? How long has he been injecting himself with this stuff? Has it been the last 2 years? Is this the first time he's used it? Where do we go from here? It's going to lead into a Bane. It has to. But like, who's going to be? We're going to have Tom Hardy again? Who knows?
Right. Well, we don't know exactly what he injects himself with.
No, I guess it's an assumption to say that It's Venom, but
I don't think it necessarily.
It's Neosporin.
Neosporin. Yeah, it helps with the boo-boos.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that it could have been something dealing with adrenaline. And I think that he, as we know, over time, Batman ends up having a utility belt that gives him a solution to literally everything.
Just anything, yeah.
But he would have planned for if I'm ever in a place where I'm too incapacitated to be able to fight, there had to be a contingency that would allow him enough adrenaline to push through to get himself out of there and to be able to fight back. So it makes sense to me, but I don't know if we've seen him necessarily shoot up drugs before. That was something different.
No, and I mean, I kind of didn't think about that possibility that it could be Venom. Somebody else mentioned that was more of a bigger Batman fan than me, and I started thinking about it. I'm like, oh, he's got a point. It's green, and like that green was important. At first, I thought it was some kind of weird kryptonite thing because I'm so trained to think kryptonite when I see green.
Right.
But I mean, I feel like if it were just some sort of medicine, it would have been in like an unmarked white tube or something like that. But who knows? I mean, I think it's definitely going to play in, or I could be wrong, and maybe it's nothing at all. It was just something that some people are overanalyzing. It's just literally just Neosporin.
Well, we'll see. That said, I think we need to go and let people know, don't go out and start injecting Neosporin.
No, just rub it all over yourself.
Yeah.
But the ending I really liked. Well, it's not like the very, very ending, but it's close. I can't remember the order. There was so much going on in that movie. We see Riddler in prison in Arkham. And he's sitting there like, he's all excited watching the bombs blow up and all that kind of stuff. And then he watches as Batman essentially saves the day and kind of stops all this stuff, this bigger plan. And he freaks out. No. And he has a friend in the cell next to him with a particular laugh. And I thought that was pretty interesting. Now, they didn't flat out say, my name is, but that's the Joker.
Everybody knows that's the Joker.
I mean, you can see part of his face, too. I mean, not so much because DC films are literally very dark, but you could see details in his face. Like, this guy is already the Joker. He's not, I don't know what identity he's going to be playing because the Joker's had so many different identities that he doesn't really have a real one. There's no one true Joker. Even within the same universes, there's been multiple Jokers. So, I mean, I think the most popular one is probably Jack Napier, because that's who was who Jack Nicholson played, I believe.
Right.
And they did other versions of that identity. I believe, didn't they mention that name in Titans too? Which is what his identity was when Robin goes to kill him, but he gets killed by Scarecrow instead. Like, it's exciting. I'm like, okay, this is Joker. I don't know who played that character though. I haven't looked that up. I don't know why, but I should have. Who plays this Joker in the prison scene at the end of the movie?
Yeah, I don't know. He doesn't pop up. At least they don't put his name on there.
Right, because I don't think they're going to put up the Joker and the credits or anything. So it might be one of those uncredited things until the next one comes out or enough time has passed, and then they're like, okay, because they're just now starting to do promotional material and trailers for Spider-Man: No Way Home,
right,
with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. After how many? It's been like 2 months or something like that since it's, or a month. Was it December, January, something like that? So I don't know, but we know it's the Joker. It has to be the Joker, or it could be like a Joker follower or something. But I'm really excited to see where the next movie goes, honestly. Because, the way they set it up, it's definitely open for another one.
Right.
Did you wait for an end credit scene?
I feel terrible because I didn't.
Well, most of us left. There was a couple of us that stayed behind because one person made a point. The lights were still off. The credits were going, and normally when the credits hit, the lights come on and everybody gets up and leaves. The lights stayed off during the credits. And we're like, wait a minute, that is a good point. The lights should be coming on. They're not. So we stand there for 10 minutes or whatever it is. And then we start to see the lights come on. We're like, oh, maybe they heard us and there is no end credit scene. Because most people were kind of chit-chatting about there's no credit scene. Let's go. There's probably not one. This isn't Marvel. And I thought, I don't know, just because it's not Marvel doesn't mean it won't have one. Technically, there is something, but it's not an end credit scene. And I was gonna joke and be like, "Oh, Superman came in and this and that," but I don't want to lie to people because I don't want to make them sit there and see. There's essentially at the very, very end of the movie, all the credits are gone. You see the green question mark, blink, 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 start blinking like the chat room website, and then it just says goodbye, and then it goes black. That's it.
So I just found out the person who played the Joker at the very end is Barry Keoghan.
Oh, not Barry Allen.
No, I'm sure that I'm totally butchering his name.
I know I would.
So this is actually the character who had played Druig in Eternals.
Okay, yeah. Interesting.
So he's a character that you would have been familiar with. Ironically, they had him labeled as Unseen Arkham Prisoner in the Batman. But we all know exactly.
We all saw him too. I mean, it was dark, but you saw enough glimmer of light on one side of his face mixed in with enough of the silhouette to know, and that laugh. I would have called it laughing prisoner. Or joking prisoner.
Right. But what that means to me is that we're gonna see more of him.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely. And how cool is it that I'm sure you've noticed this too, but so many different universes between Marvel and DC, and we're starting to see more actors transition almost simultaneously and be in this one universe and then be in this universe, completely different companies at the same time. And that's interesting to me. I don't know if
yeah.
that's like, I really think the next big cinematic comic book type thing that could happen is a crossover movie. Because we've
They
seen Endgame and we've seen all that develop. Now we're seeing the DC stuff getting a little bit better. There needs to be a point where like they meet and something happens.
Well, when you look at the fandoms, people have talked about kind of the toxicity in fandoms. That either some people are like, either you're a DC fan or you're a Marvel fan. Frankly, for me, I just love superhero characters. Growing up, I read just as many DC comics as I did Marvel comics. For me, it was all about the story. It wasn't about loyalty to one group or another.
Right.
And so it would be really interesting just to see people lose their minds by going and
Oh my
having
gosh.
uh, Superman fighting alongside the Avengers, or Batman joining up with the X-Men, or something along those lines.
I keep trying to think of different combinations and I really don't know. I almost said Spider-Man and Ant-Man, but I'm like, duh, they already did that. That's
Right.
Marvel. But I'm trying to think of like a goofy, like childlike, teenaged kind of character from like DC. Maybe Quicksilver, or no, it was Marvel too. Dang it, what am I thinking of? The Flash. Why did I say Quicksilver? I had Marvel on the brain. But yeah, like the Flash interacting with Spider-Man or something like that. You know, Ezra Miller or Grant Gustin, whatever. That would be interesting. Or see, Thor walk onto the Flash or something. That's the only thing they haven't done as far as there's characters they haven't, created versions for yet. But I mean, in terms of like the next big thing that they can do, like Endgame kind of was like, okay, that's it for Marvel. Not that it's all they can do. They'll do more movies, more shows. And they're doing really great on that. But there's really nothing major that can be done. I feel like that's the one big thing that needs to happen. And
I think that what Marvel and the MCU in general has proven is that they can really set a plan and
yeah,
put all of these different pieces into motion to tell great individual stories and to tell epic long-term stories. I still feel like that's the one thing that DC struggles with is they can do great standalone movies, but they're not so good at interconnecting those individual movies.
and hopefully that does change because the Flash film is really almost telling you we're doing that now.
Yeah.
Because they tried it with Batman, Superman, and they tried it with Justice League, and those kind of worked a little bit, but it seems like some things are getting rebooted, other things aren't, and it's like now again, it's multiversal. They could always bring Ben Affleck back in a year or two and say, "Okay, do your own movie." Like here we go, and that could be part of that. But that's the thing; they don't pace it right. It's all over the place. Instead of like a linear path, they have this.
How can I help?
Oh, my little assistant on my phone thing heard me talking, and they're like, "Wait, well, who's that?" But yeah, they're all over the place with all this stuff, and it's like Marvel did such a good job. I mean, we're talking this is 2022, and they started that journey in 2008. I think the first Iron Man came out in what was it, 2008? I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And then DC just started whatever Batman versus Superman, whenever that came out. That's kind of when their whole cinematic universe started, which relatively recent. It was like maybe less than 10 years ago. So, and how good did it feel when Mark Guggenheim agreed with us? We're like, oh, DC's trying to play catch up. He's like, absolutely. I'm like, yes, I was right. Not that it was a test or anything, but I guess it felt good to have a guy that has written so many stories for both companies agree with something we said. I'm like,
Oh yeah,
this is great.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to all this stuff to come, and I know we're about to wrap up here in a second, but I know I wanted to say I've been watching, and you know this, I've been watching the Book of Boba Fett
Yeah.
lately, and I'm on like the 4th or 5th episode, and it is a little hard to follow because not eventually I start to make sense of it, because anytime you basically see him out of the suit, it's before I learned that. I'm like, oh, okay, because I kept thinking he took the suit off and like, let me go walk through the sand a little bit, and like it took me a minute to realize what was flashback and what was now, and it's really nice. It's a really good story, and I'm waiting for the main character of the Mandalorian to show up, because he's the main character and he's not even popped up yet. It's a joke, I guess, because apparently he's in it quite a bit at the end.
He is.
But I haven't gotten that far. I think I'm on like episode 4, maybe 5.
Okay, you're gonna see him next.
So yeah, it's pretty good. And one of the reasons I really finally launched myself into getting Disney again was because they stream a lot of their content in 4K. And given the fact that I got this 4K TV now, I'm like, I want to watch anything that looks beautiful and 4K and amazing. So I thought, let me go back and watch Star Wars some, like the new stuff, and I'm going to go back and rewatch the entire MCU.
So we will look forward to doing another episode, going and talking about the Book of Boba Fett.
Mm-hmm. And maybe somehow, somewhere along the line, do like a timeline of the MCU, because like I said, I do plan on watching the entire MCU in order. I'm going to start with the first Iron Man. I keep wanting to call it Marvel Man. The first Iron Man all the way to, I don't know, Hawkeye show. Like again, like from point A to point B, like all the way through.
That would be awesome.
And I don't know how I'm going to order. If I'm going to watch it in the cinematic release order or the story continuity order, because I love how Disney Plus has them organized in the continuity order. So they're not necessarily chronological, but they kind of place them where the stories make sense. And I kind of want to watch it in that order, I think. But we'll see. And maybe I'll update like this week on the MCU Roundup. Iron Man finally saves the day. I don't know. We'll see. But it's going to be fun to rewatch all those movies.
Yeah, I agree.
And Star Wars. I'm going to watch 1 through episode 75 or however many there are now, in order, all the films. So there's plenty of content on Disney Plus.
There is.
At like, what, $8 a month, you can't really beat it.
Right. Well, and then they're bringing in the Netflix Marvel shows too, right? Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Punisher, and Iron Fist. So
it's been rumored too that they're developing new stuff with Daredevil. So
I mean, that would just be so smart. Again, if you're gonna bring in those characters, might as well do something with them.
You might as well. I mean, keep it going. And a lot of shows get popular after they're over.
Yeah.
And so, like, build on that. Don't let that die down. Like, keep it going. You know, people love new stuff, and new stuff of their favorite older stuff.
Absolutely.
But not reboots. We hate reboots. No, they can be good. Yeah. Well, this has been a fun show. Thanks for everybody for tuning in and watching and. Tuning in and watching. That's the same thing, silly. Now I'm talking to myself. Oh, gosh. Okay, so Corey's like, you could tell it was what year it was released by the gas prices. Yeah, too much gas is too much. I can't afford to drive anywhere.
So you're in North Carolina. How high is your gas there?
I think the last time I got gas nearly a week ago, it was $4.05. But I think at the same place, just yesterday, it was like, oh gosh, like 420 something, 422 or 23.
Okay, number one, I would kill to get gas that cheap. Here in California right now, the gas station on the corner by my house, I've got to buy mid-grade for my car, and that's over $6.
Holy crap!
I got cheap gas from a place on the sketchy side of town over by where I used to live. And I was excited. And I think I got it for $5.70 a gallon.
Wow, and you were excited about that price.
It was considerably less than other places, but still, yeah, these gas prices are no joke.
It's almost risen a whole dollar in just a matter of weeks.
Oh yeah,
Because I know a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, whatever, it was like 3.29 here, and then the same station is like where I just said, and it's also at the end of the road here, around the like down the block from my house and stuff. So it's insane. And there's other stations across the other sides of town that are 4.99. Well, not 4.99, but like 4.50, 4.60. There was actually a station probably about 30 to 45 minutes from here that, and I thought this was one of those joke posts at first, but they literally were selling gas for like $2.79 or something, which was almost $2 cheaper, or $1.50 cheaper than every other station almost in the state. And they were interviewed on like a website or some kind of article, and they said they just really felt for people. They really wanted to help them out. But I'm like, my mom calls me up, like, you should go try that. That's pretty near you, right? I'm like, yeah, it's like half an hour. Go get gas. Go get gas. I'm like, it's going to take me 30 minutes to get there, and an hour of driving just to get gas for like $1, almost $2 cheaper. And plus, by the time I get there, that gas is going to be gone, because that's not going to, some small time country gas station is not going to keep gas at $2 under market value for that long.
right.
But it's crazy.
Yeah,
Hopefully
also
jet fuel doesn't go up.
Yeah, that'd be crazy.
Because flights, if this keeps going into the summer, I'm like, I might have to get a second job to buy gas money for the plane so I can come out to California.
Have you bought your ticket? So you haven't bought your ticket yet?
I haven't bought it yet. I was kind of waiting for all my tax refund money to come in before I really kind of to get everything. And I'm trying to decide when a good time to fly in would be. I'm like, okay, let me look. Ideally, earlier ones are cheaper, it seems like. But yeah, I guess there's a few things to go into that, to think, okay, what would be the best timing of the day and all that kind of stuff. But I also forget that the flight times are local, so arriving at, say, 9 p.m. would really be 6 p.m. because of the 3-hour time zone difference. So
right.
I don't know. I haven't gotten it yet. I'm trying to find a cheap deal, and it does seem like you can go onto like Priceline and places like that and get cheaper ones than you do straight from the airline websites.
Yeah, that's where I would go first.
Yeah, because it's like $100 difference in some cases I've seen. But I'm trying to find one without like a quick layover time. Like, I actually almost want to be stopped for about an hour or more, so that I can make my way to the next gate to get to the plane to get back over there. Because if it's like a 20-minute window, I'm going to be like, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm not going to make it in time. And
I will tell you, one of the worst. I think we were at Chicago O'Hare. We had the girls with us, and they were Amber was a baby, and Vicky was just walking. And we had one of those where we were on one side of the airport, and we had to get to the other side of the airport in about 20 minutes with 2 little kids and carry-on stuff, and that was a scramble.
Now, did you leave one at home that fought criminals?
No.
Okay, because that sounds like the beginnings of that kind of story.
I know.
But yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. That's why I kind of want like a longer layover time, so I can find my way to where I'm going instead of having to be rushed.
Generally, it seems that the more layovers you have, the less your ticket costs. That seems to be pretty consistent too. If you get a straight shot flight, those are a little bit more pricey.
Yeah, I mean, luckily there's not a direct flight from here to, because I've been looking at Ontario Airport like you were suggesting, and there's nothing from here directly there. The closest west, the furthest west that anything from our airport goes is Vegas. But that'd be cool, flying to Vegas just to see everything. Like, oh, look, it's Vegas. Get on the airplane to the next place. Like, that'd be awesome.
Yeah,
if I could work that out, to fly over Vegas, stop, and then get on the plane and go to the next one. No matter what city I change over in, I am not going to leave the airport and explore, even if I have like 6 hours, because I'm like, I don't want to go through security again. So I'm just going to stay in, unless it's like 12 hours or something. I'm like, okay, I might want to go down the road and get a sandwich or something. But
right. Well, and at the Vegas airport, there are casinos right there. Tons of restaurants. So there's
cool.
Plenty there. I've been at that airport a lot.
It would be nice if there were a flight from here to. Like, we have flights from here to Vegas, but it's finding a flight from Vegas to Ontario that would, if there is one that close, because that's pretty close.
There are a lot of, believe it or not, there are a lot of plane flights that go from Vegas to Ontario.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I might have to. Well, actually, too, like here, Asheville to Charlotte, North Carolina, which is like maybe a 2-hour drive. There's flights between those two. So, but yeah, we're talking about flights and stuff. We're going over.
I know.
We're like clicking off. Like, stop talking about airplanes. But thanks everybody for coming in today and watching and talking about Batman with us. We're gonna hopefully next week we'll go into something. We don't really have anything huge planned. The Batman was kind of a special thing that just kind of popped up. Perhaps next week we can get back into our CW Arrowverse shows because we've got a little bit to catch up on there. I have not been watching Naomi, but I watched The Flash this past week, and I have thoughts. So we can talk about that next week, and then
that sounds good to me.
Maybe mention a little bit of the Book of Boba Fett.
All right, sounds good.
All right, well, have a good night. I'm going to go grab some dinner, even though it's really late now. I eat weird times sometimes when I'm at home. I don't know. But don't forget, YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, torture them to watch, whatever you have to do.
Blackmail, coercion.
Yeah, anything. Just don't tell them we said to do it because we don't want to be. Yeah, don't do that. Just if you feel like it, just know that it was your choice, not ours.
Right.
But yeah, thanks everybody, and hope everybody has a good week.
Yeah. Have a good night.
All that kind of thing. Have a good night. We'll see you next week. Now, where is my video clip? Okay, there we go. Now, everybody, have a good week.